This chapter is giving more information about all these topics. Mainly we are going to study about liberalization, privatization and globalization. Okay, we can go through the introduction. You have studied in the previous chapter that since independence, India got independence in 1947. After that, what happened? After that, our economists, our leaders of this country wanted to develop this nation the proper way. So they have implemented so many strategies by which our economy can develop better way. Okay, so India followed the mixed economy framework by combining the advantages of the capitalist economic system with those of the socialist economic system. So we know that actually we are following mixed economy. India is following mixed economy. We are not following capitalism alone, or we are not following the socialist view alone. Okay, we combined the advantages, we combined the advantages of both capitalism and socialism. So what economy we are following? We are following socialist economy. Okay, India is an example for mixed economy. We are following mixed economy. Okay, we are not following socialist economy alone. We are not following capitalist economy alone. Actually, we are following a mixed economy. India is an example for mixed economy. Okay, Indian economy is an example for mixed economy. That you need to remember. Okay, so what happened? Some scholars argue that over the years this policy resulted in the establishment of variety of rules and laws. We are following in 1947 onwards. Okay, since 1947 we are following the mixed economy in India. So we are following mixed economy so that actually a lot of changes we can see in our economy. Okay, so we can see a lot of changes in our economy which were aimed at controlling and regulating the economy. These mixed economy policies, the policies of our government, actually what they are doing? So regulating and controlling the economy properly. Then it is also started stopping the hampering forces. What is hampering? There are many forces that is actually stopping the growth of our economy. So we want to accelerate the growth in our economy. So the hampering, the such policies, such strategies, such rules and regulations which are actually creating stumbling blocks or the hindrances that we need to remove from our economy, that actually the many policies of mixed economy is aiming. Okay, so that is actually hampering. The hampering rules and laws we removed from our economy in order to increase the process of growth and development. Okay, so we wanted to bring the changes in our economy. Changes can be introduced only when we follow the exact process of growth and development. Others state that some other economists explain that they also say that others state that which started its developmental path from near stagnation. Indian economy faced a lot of troubles while the Britishers ruled our country. During the time of Britishers rule, India was actually not in a good position. Indian economy was actually facing a lot of troubles. Okay, mainly the growth, the national income, the per capita income and the GDP was not in a considerable changes. It was actually going downward like that. But whereas the Britain's economy was growing and developing fastly. Okay, that we have already studied in our first chapter. Okay, now here in this lesson what we are studying why Indian economy got this much changes. Why? What happened? What are the steps accelerated India's faster changes. Actually, we are studying India's faster changes occurred after the 1990s. In 1991, the government of India introduced new economic policy. Then our government introduced mainly liberalization, privatization and globalization. All these actually. We are also following mixed economy. India is an example for mixed economy. Indian economy is an example for mixed economy, okay. But whereas China is following socialist economy, and America like countries, they are following capitalist economy. But India combined the advantages of capitalist as well as the socialist economic system. Now we are following now we are following mixed economy, okay. So this following the mixed economy and its economic policies helped India to attain more development. That is what actually we are studying in this. So diversified industrial sector which produces a variety of goods and has experienced sustained expansion of agricultural output, which has ensured food and security. After following the mixed economical system and lot of new strategies in order to bring development in our economy, what happened? Lot of changes we can see in the industrial sector as well as in the field of agricultural sector. It happened only because of our economic system. Through the 5-year plans, our government introduced a lot of changes. Initially, our aim was to increase food production. That happened, okay. So now what is happening? We got food security, we have surplus of food production. Food grains nowadays we are also exporting to other countries. So we can move on to the next point, to the next page. We can. In 1991, India met with an economic crisis. What happened? In 1991, that time, 1990-91, that time, what happened? That time Narasimha Rao was our Indian Prime Minister and Manmohan Singh was at that time our Finance Minister. So during that time, what happened? In 1991, India met with an economic crisis relating to its external debt. There were a lot of debt. Okay, we can go through the details, then we can understand it more. The government was not able to make repayments on its borrowings. You know that every country borrows some money from other countries for its development. Okay, India too took that time lot of money from other countries, from abroad. Foreign exchange reserves which we generally maintain to import petroleum and other important items dropped to the levels that were not sufficient for even a fortnight. You know that our foreign exchange was not enough. Foreign money we were keeping in our treasuries was not enough for importing products or for repaying the borrowed money. You know that India mainly import petroleum products from other countries, mainly from Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq. From all those Arabian countries we import petroleum products. When we import products from other countries, then what we needed to pay? We needed to pay them money, Indian money they won't take. Then what we need to do? We needed to give them dollars, USD, American dollar we wanted to pay. So what happened? We were not having enough fund in our country to repay the borrowed money as well as the money for the imported goods, mainly the petroleum products. We were not having sufficient money, to maintain such debts, okay, to repay such debts and to pay for imported goods. Okay, the crisis was further compounded by rising prices of essential goods. So what happened? India was facing troubles, lot of internal troubles as well. Inflation went up. So, lot of essential goods, the primary goods or essential goods, like that we want eatables, mainly rice, wheat, etc. So its price also went up. So all these led the government to introduce a new set of policy measures which changed the direction of our developmental strategies. The government decided to change its strategy, policies, because India were following poor economic policies till that time. In 1991, India introduced a new economic policy by which India's developmental growth got much changes. Okay, why new economic policy our economists and our leaders introduced? Because they wanted to manage the economic crisis and they wanted to bring fundamental changes in our nation, in our country. Infrastructural development we wanted to do, we wanted to bring lot of development in the field of agriculture, we wanted to develop science and technology, we wanted to give better education to our children, we also wanted to provide, the government wants to provide better health facilities to its citizens. So everything will happen only when we have a strong economy. The GDP level must increase, goods and services and its productivity, the people's productivity must increase, and also the country wants to export more goods to other countries, then only a country can be experienced the state of development. So the country and its leaders wanted to transform India. The transition took place in 1991 onwards, because our leaders introduced new economic policy. Okay, so then what happened? We could see lot of changes in our economy, in the field of agriculture, in the field of industrialization, industrial sector, lot of changes the government has adopted and brought lot of changes in our economy. Okay, adopted lot of changes by implementing the new economic policy. This is what actually the main points we want to understand in this chapter. Then we can move on to the next point. Check the next point, background. The origin of the financial crisis can be traced from the inefficient management of the Indian economy in the 1980s. What happened? In the 1980s, we were following inefficient management. Our government was not following a proper economic policy and its management, proper management system was not there. So the inefficient management brought financial crisis in our country, okay. It happened in 1980s. We know that for implementing various policies and its general administration, the government generates funds from various sources such as taxation, running of public sector enterprises, etc. From where government get funds? Mainly from taxes and from public sectors. There are many public sector enterprises in our country, like Indian Railways there, NDPC is there, National Thermal Power Corporation is there, like that so many public sector enterprises are there. So they are also earning money, and also from implementing better new taxes. The government introduces tax collection the government is getting. So from tax and from public sector enterprises, government make some fund, money to manage other developmental process in India. The government got lot of things to do. They wanted to bring lot of changes in our country, that therefore they need money. Without money, no government can bring development. Even without money, we cannot also run our family. We also need money for the for our livelihood or our day-to-day activities. We want more money. Likewise, the government also need fund to bring lot of changes. They wanted to create new roads, fundamental changes they wanted to bring in our country, like infrastructural development, roads, railway tracks, then lot of bridges, so many things, airports, hospitals, colleges, so many public enterprises they wanted to make. So many issues are there to manage or to solve. So the government need money. That is what, all those money they can get from taxes and from public sector enterprises. When expenditure is more than income, what will happen? When expenditure is more than income, what will happen? So the income is very less and expenditure is more than the income, then no economy can stand, even no family can stand perfectly, because their expenditure is more. Then they have to borrow money from others to manage their day-to-day activities. So this same thing happened with India in 1980s and till 1991. India was actually facing lot of issues and financial crisis. Okay, so if there is no proper money in our country, proper enough money in our country to manage our day-to-day activities, then what will happen? When expenditure is more than income, the government borrows to finance the deficit from banks and also from people within the country and from the international financial institutions. The government, if the government is not having enough fund, then what the government will do? Government will also take money from other people. Okay, some other money lenders are there, international money lenders are there, then some other financial institutions are there. They also give money to the governments. Okay, they also give money to other countries. Then what we have taken at that time, we also took money from the banks. There are many banks provide money for governments. For what government want money? The government wanted to do its developmental activities. Okay, so India was actually facing financial crisis. India could not repay the borrowed money in time. So then what happened? When we import goods like petroleum, we pay in dollars which we earn from our exports. We were facing financial crisis in those days. Also, you know that we import petroleum products from other countries. So what we want? We want dollars which we earn from our export. Then only we can repay, we can pay the money for imported products like petroleum. So what we want? We want to export more products to other countries and earn money. Then only we can import petroleum like more products. Okay, but without petroleum, of course, our country cannot go ahead. Okay, because vehicles we wanted to run in our country, there are many companies we wanted to run in our country. So it will happen only when we have petroleum and petroleum products. Okay, so this is what actually, since that time in 1980s, India was facing financial crisis. The financial crisis, then our economists and our leaders thought about it 100 times, how to overcome the issues, how to overcome from these stumbling blocks, how to overcome these hindrances which are blocking or stopping our developmental progress. Okay, so that actually we wanted to accelerate the developmental progress. In order to that, what we wanted to change the economic policies. At present, what are the policies we are following? That is not giving any result. So the leaders of India thought about it in 1980s and in the first part of 1990s. Okay, then what the changes they brought in our country, that we can check. So we can move on to the next point. Development policies required that even though the revenues were very low, of course, in those days India's revenue from the tax and from other public enterprises were not actually enough to manage our day-to-day activities in our country. Then also they have to spend for the basic needs. Okay, health services our country wanted to progress, or our country wanted to continue the health service, education, our country wanted to continue. We wanted to give good education to our children. We wanted to give food, enough, the basic food, enough food to our children, those who are studying in the schools and in the colleges. So we wanted to provide. Okay, so everything will happen only when a country is having enough fund. That time India was not having enough fund. That is what the main point you need to remember. The government had to overshoot its revenue to meet challenges like unemployment. Our revenue, income, earnings was very less, not enough to manage our country's basic needs. More unemployment was there, poverty was there, and population explosion. All these are the basic things actually a country is facing nowadays. We wanted to find solution, answer for, or remedy for unemployment. Unemployment will go when we implement new strategies, when we educate people, when we give skill based education. Okay, skill India development, already our new government started. Also we wanted to eradicate poverty. Poverty eradication will happen only when we produce more food grains, food production, surplus of food production. India attained surplus of food production. Then we wanted to distribute all those food grains through the supply chains. We have ration shops, etc. Okay, then population explosion we wanted to check. How to check it? So we wanted to make people aware about its bad effect in our society or in our country. The population explosion is happening. Okay, so we wanted to correct it. The government is following its remedies also. Government started already working on it. The family planning, etc., government is introducing. Okay, that as a good citizens we have to follow the governments and its such remedial procedures we have to follow. Then the continued spending on development programs of the government did not generate additional revenue, and in those days our government could not generate additional revenue to meet all those needs. That is why India faced financial crisis in 1980s. Okay, moreover the government was not able to generate sufficiently from internal sources such as taxation. Even in those days India is collecting tax from all over India and its people, but that was not enough to meet all those challenges. Okay, that was not enough. When the government was spending a large share of its income on areas which do not provide immediate returns, such as the social sector and the defense, of course India is spending millions and millions of rupees or crores of rupees actually for maintaining a better army in our nation, defense. Also in social sector, women empowerment, child development, health sector, all those areas also government is spending lot of money. Okay, so India's more money is going into that areas. There was a need to utilize the rest of its revenue in a highly efficient manner. So what we want? The government wanted to utilize its revenue in a highly efficient manner. The basic needs we wanted to manage. India as a country, we need better defense system. We need army, better army. We also wanted to take care of social sector well. Okay, children's education, Anganwadis, we needed to supply food to kids, nutritious foods we wanted to supply. Then women empowerment we wanted to do. We wanted to develop skill development. We also wanted to invest in the field of structural development, that we cannot deny. So the income revenue is very less, but expenditure was more at that time. Okay, so then what happened? The income from public sector undertaking was also not very high to meet the growing expenditure. Expenditure was very high. Public sector was not supplying, giving enough fund to government to manage all those issues. Okay. Then at times our foreign exchange borrowed from other countries and international financial institutions was sent on meeting consumption needs. India was borrowing money from other country to meet up our basic needs. So India could not save anything, India could not create more income generation India could not do. Simply we were spending the money for the basic needs. So India was in financial crisis in those days. Neither was an attempt made to reduce such profligate spending. Profligate spending means mounting, enhancing, improving, growing expenditure, proliferating. The expenditure was going up. So we failed, and in those days our economists or politicians failed to manage the crisis. We were simply taking or borrowing money from international financial institutions and from some other banks. Okay, so that was actually our spending was actually going up. We were not given sufficient attention, was not given to boost exports to pay for the growing imports. Imports were, we were importing more goods, but export was very less. So what our government decided, we wanted, if we follow the same economic policy, then India will ruin, India cannot get development. Therefore Indian politicians and economists decided to change the economic policy. That happened in 1991. New economic policy came into existence in 1991. In the late 1980s, government expenditure began to exceed its revenue by such large margins that meeting the expenditure through borrowings become unsustainable, taking always more money from other countries and more money from other countries and spending it for our fundamental developments or basic developments, and simply spending money, that's all, for basic needs, for doing infrastructural development and everything. Income generation was not happening. So it was not good. India was really facing economic crisis. Okay, prices of many essential goods rose sharply. In those days, what happened? Prices of essential goods. What are the essential goods? You know that actually food, cloth, etc. are essential goods. Okay, so its prices of many essential goods rose sharply, went up. It was high rates, it was going up. Imports grew at a very large high rate without matching growth of export. We were importing more goods and services. We imported from other countries, but export was not sufficient. Proper way, better way. We didn't promote more quality products and its exports didn't happen. Okay, we could not export more products. As pointed out earlier, foreign exchange reserves declined. Our foreign money in our treasuries was not sufficient to manage the imported goods and its payment. We could not pay the money well properly in time to other countries for import for such goods. We import mainly for petroleum products. We borrowed from other countries. Okay, so we borrowed, we didn't pay the money in time. Okay, our debt was mounting up, it was going up and up, more debt was there. As pointed out earlier, foreign exchange reserves declined to a level that was not adequate to finance imports for more than 2 weeks. It was not enough money in our treasuries. We could not manage our import of goods properly. We wanted to pay the money back. It was not properly. It didn't happen. We had not keeping enough money. There was also not sufficient foreign exchange to pay the interest that needed to be paid to the international lenders. We were taking money from other money lenders, financial institutions. We needed to pay the interest, even interest. Okay, we needed to pay the money back, also the interest. Even we were not having enough money to pay at least the interest, we could not pay in time. Okay, so that means extreme financial crisis India was facing in those days in 1980s. Okay. Also, no country or international funder was willing to lend to India in those days. In those days, almost every country in the world knew that India is in financial crisis, and nobody came forward to support India in those days. No one was ready to fund for India's development in those days, because India was facing financial crisis. That is what actually. Then what happened? In such a situation, what happened? In such a situation, India approached the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. India approached International Bank, World Bank, International Monetary Fund. All those are financial institutions. They support other countries to develop or manage their financial crisis. So what happened? India approached the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, popularly known as World Bank. The World Bank is there. So India approached them. Then International Monetary Fund, it is known as IMF, short name, that is IMF. We approached Indian leaders or economists, approached our administrators, approached the World Bank and its IMF, International Monetary Fund also. They agreed to support India financially. They issued $7 billion as loan to manage the crisis, India's basic crisis. They wanted to manage. So they supported us. For availing the loan, these international agencies expected India to liberalize and open up the economy by removing restrictions of the private sector. What happened? India was facing financial crisis in those days in 1980s and mainly in the 1990, in the first part of 1990. What happened? Our Indian administrators or politicians or our government, our finance minister, also our prime minister, Indian government approached to International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, popularly known as World Bank, and its IMF bank is also their branch, International Monetary Fund. Both these financial institutions agreed to support India, and they issued $7 billion to India for its developmental process. Okay. Then what happened? They suggested, simply they do not give money, they suggested India to change its economic policy. Economic policy needed to be changed. Then only India can repay. They give loan, but they also wanted to check the repaying capacity of a country. Okay. Of course, when we approach to a bank, they will also ask to us, when we go to the bank and take a loan, we wanted to take a loan, then what will happen? Bank will ask you, what are your repayment capacity? How are you going to repay the amount? The same thing happened in India's topic also, in this matter. What happened? They asked, they studied about Indian economy and its structure. Then they said, India's present structure, economic structure is not good. What you needed to do? You have to implement, Indian government needed to implement liberalization, privatization and globalization. India's business policy is not good. There are a lot of laws and regulations, rules and regulations that is hampering, that is actually blocking a private sector, industrialization. Then that is also blocking globalization. So what we need, if we want to develop our economy, our rules and laws must be liberalized. We wanted to give some liberalized liberty, okay, liberalization, simplification. Our government needed to do, simplify the restrictions we needed to remove. We wanted to promote industrialization. Okay, now lot of changes you can see in our country because our government started liberalization. There is no much restriction. There is no to stopping the private organizations to participate in developmental programs. So many private organizations are supporting our developmental progress. Okay, now our government is also making hand in hand or going hand doing business or going hand with the private organization. Private organizations are participating with the government for its developmental progress and for enhancing Indian economy, okay, improving the structure changes in India that is happening. So industrial sector and its development is happening accelerated only because of this liberalization, privatization and globalization. Privatization means more people, private individuals must come forward to start their own business. They can start their own business how? It is possible only when we give a good education, proper training, skill development. People must be professional, talent we have to inculcate within them. Talent, they must have talent, skill they must have. Then only proper development will happen. Then we need to give finance money to them to start their own business. That is also happening. Now there are many commercial banks, industrial banks, Industrial Development Bank of India is there. Now there are many other banks like small scale industrial bank is there, Industrial Development Bank is there. All those are this NABARD is there. All those banks are actually giving money for small scale industries as well as agricultural development. Okay, so lot of changes is happening. Then what is happened? The private sector, more private parties came into the market. They have started more companies, started shops, organizations they have started. Then globalization happened. What is globalization? Indian economy open for global market. Now you can see a lot of international companies are operating within this country. Lot of international financial institutions are operating within this country. Lot of changes you can see. Lot of changes you can see. Now Indian people are getting better education, more development in the areas of public sector, industrialization, industrial sector. You can see lot of changes in the field of agriculture, science and technology. Lot of changes you can see. Infrastructural development, a lot of transformation you can see. Overall development our India is receiving. Why it happened? It happened only because of new economic policy which is introduced in 1991 by our government. Our government introduced this new economic policy. So then what happened? The government's role reduced, then trade restrictions removed. So now India can make very easy industrial policies with other countries, and easily Indian business sectors can make business with other countries. So then what happened? Trade restrictions between India and other countries removed. Now globalization happened. Any global companies, international company can operate their service in India. They can also open branches in India. Many financial institutions are in our country, like Citibank is there, HSBC Bank is there. So many foreign banks are operating in our country. Financial institutions, mutual funds are working in our country. So many health insurance companies are working in our country. So even from all those are international companies. So lot of changes are visible nowadays in our country. Everything happened only because of this new economic policy as suggested by World Bank and International Monetary Fund. Yes, dear students, we were studying about the economic crisis in India. So India agreed to the conditionalities of World Bank and IMF and announced the new economic policy in 1991. Earlier we had studied that actually India was facing economic crisis in 1980s. Okay, so that time what happened? No international institutions or financial institutions were coming forward to support India. India was actually facing economic crisis. Okay, so in order to escape from this economic crisis, what we did, our economists and our administrators contacted World Bank and IMF. IMF means International Monetary Fund. What they did, they provided as they were ready to support us by providing $7 billion to reconstruct India's economy. Okay, so then what happened? India agreed to the conditionalities. World Bank and IMF, International Monetary Fund, suggested our economists to change India's economic policy. So we agreed that India also showed interest to change the economic policy. Okay, so that the fundamental changes we can change in our country, fundamental changes we can do in our country in order to bring the economic development. That's what India agreed to the conditionalities of World Bank and IMF and announced the new economic policy. The new economic policy consisted of wide-ranging economic reforms. What are the reforms that we will study? As per the new economic policies, what are the changes our government initiated in India in order to get more economic development in our country? So what are the reforms we introduced? The thirst of the policies was towards creating a more competitive environment in the economy and removing the barriers to entry and growth of firms. There were a lot of barriers, hindrances, stumbling blocks those stumbling blocks were actually not allowing more new industries to enter in our economy. So there were hindrances that actually stopped more companies to come into our market and operate their services. Okay, so the new economic policy abolished or removed all those regulations, all those such type of laws and rules, and policies they changed. Okay, the new reforms our government introduced. So come to the point. This set of policies can broadly be classified into two groups. What are the policies government introduced? So mainly we can classify all those into two groups. The stabilization measures. Okay, the first was stabilization measures. We wanted to stabilize India's economy, and the structural reform. Then the structural reform measures. Stabilization measures are short-term measures. They are actually short-term measures that intended to correct some of the weakness that have developed in the balance of payments. So we have already studied that India borrowed finance from international financial institutions. Okay, India also took borrowed money from money lenders as well as some banks. So we wanted to repay the money. So because of this economic crisis, Indian government could not repay the amount. Then what we did? In that situation, India contacted the World Bank, and World Bank suggested as to change the economic policy to bring the stabilization measures and the structural reform in our economy, so that we can we can create fundamental changes in our economy. Okay, so that we can, what the economy will get development, so that we can repay the balance, pending balance amount. Okay, so that we can continue, we can go ahead with our import export activities. So before we were actually facing troubles in importing goods, we wanted to pay the money, our treasuries were actually empty, we had no enough fund at that time to repay the amount. That is what actually. So another thing is that the Indian market, in India, Indian market was facing inflation, so that the price went up, the products or goods, prices of goods went up, so the inflation was there, the money's value went down. Also, in simple words, this means that there was a need to maintain sufficient foreign exchange reserves and keep the rising prices under control. So the stabilization and structural reforms we wanted to make in India, otherwise the Indian economy cannot perform well. That is why Indian government changed its economic policy. In 1991 it introduced new economic policy implemented. Okay, so what was the goal of that new economic policy? The goal of new economic policy was to bring fundamental changes, drastic changes in our economy. We wanted to increase the productivity in our country, overall development in the field of agriculture, in the field of production, in the field of industrial sector, and in the field of transportation, as well as in the field of health, science and technology, etc. So the overall development we wanted to bring in our country, we want to increase productivity in our economy. So that is why the GDP level we wanted to increase, the production of goods and services, more values must generate and enhance the value of goods and services. So that is why, in order to get all such development in our country, what we needed to do, we needed to do such an economic policy. Then only we can bring fundamental changes. So that happened. So what happened? The efficiency of the economy we wanted to increase, international competitiveness we wanted to bring in our economy. So we want such type of industrial organizations which can compete with the international companies. Okay, so the professional way we wanted to export goods, more finished goods we wanted to make in our economy. That also we want. We want skilled laborers, we want a skilled, educated, trained, professional, highly qualified talent we want in our country. So this will happen only when we have enough fund in our economy. Enough fund will come only when our government receive enough money. Government will receive enough money only when the productivity increase in our country, so that the government can implement new taxes to its citizens or the production houses. Then the companies, production houses, the industrial sector will actually support the government with more taxes. Okay, more taxes, as well as the governmental departments. The government is also, the public sector also got so many public enterprises, such as railway is there, NTPC is there, okay, Bharat Heavy Electrical Limited is there. So many such organizations our government also got. All they can generate income only we have proper strategies in our country. We need resource development in our country. Okay, that will happen only when we implement and when we are ready to change our ongoing policies that our government understood. And in 1991 the government decided to change its ongoing economic policy And as per the suggestion of World Bank and International Monetary Fund, we agreed to change our economic policy and we implemented new economic policy. That is what you need to remember in this page. Okay. So the government, so what are the main points? As per the new economic policy, we introduced liberalization. We also introduced privatization and globalization. We will come to know what are the benefits of liberalization, privatization and globalization. So we can move on to the next point. Liberalization, as pointed out in the beginning, rules and laws which were aimed at regulating the economic activities became major hindrances in growth and development. Till 1990s, there were some rules and laws that were actually creating a lot of hindrances. Hindrances means what? Stumbling blocks that actually stop. It's not actually accelerating the development process. Okay, so we wanted to remove the hindrances that happened. The government decided to regulate the economic activities by removing the hindrances in growth and development. So liberalization was introduced to put an end to those restrictions and open various sectors of the economy. We wanted to open our economy by removing the restrictions, all those hindrances which are stopping the economic and other developmental growth in our country. So what happened in 1980s? Our government introduced some new policies in order to change the economy. But what happened? Then also our government could not attain the maximum benefits. So the perfect new economic policy we introduced in 1991 in order to bring fundamental changes in our economy in the field of agriculture, technology, export, import, acceleration, etc. happened. The Indian government was aiming to bring complete transformation in our economy. So that is why a complete economic policy with complete future plan we introduced as per the suggestions of World Bank and IMF. When we did introduce it in 1991, we introduced it was actually our new economic policy which we introduced in 1991 was more comprehensive. It was in full. It was a complete package actually. It was we can say the wholesome package, the wholesome new economic policy the government introduced in 1991. Let us study some important areas such as the industrial sector, financial sector, tax reforms, foreign exchange markets and trade and investment sectors which received greater attention in and after 1991. After introducing this new economic policy, what happened? India's fundamental growth changed actually. The fundamental changes we experienced, okay, the Indian economy's drastic changes it brought, okay. So we can say comprehensive changes, we can say fundamentally Indian economy changed. So the perfect changes we experienced in the field of industrial sector, financial sector, tax reforms, foreign exchange markets and trade and investment sectors which received greater attention. So the more focus all these sectors received. Also got a lot of changes. The visible changes are now you can see. The changes are there. So many changes you can experience nowadays. After implementing this new economic policy in 1991, India's economy started changing. Now you know that India's economy is the 5th largest economy in the world. It happened. Why it happened? How these development changes occurred in our economy? How? Because of this 1991's economic policy introduced by our government as per the suggestions of World Bank and International Monetary Fund. That's what. Now we can move on to the next point. Deregulation of industrial sector. What is that? In India, regulatory mechanisms were enforced in various ways. So the first point is industrial licensing, under which every entrepreneur had to get permission from government officials to start a firm, close a firm, or decide the amount of goods that could be produced. The second point is private sector was not allowed in many industries. Third one is some goods could be produced only in small scale industries, and the fourth was controls on price fixation and distribution of selected industrial products. So overall changes the new economic policy brought in the field of industrial sector. Liberalization happened, privatization implemented. Privatization means private parties, private organization can form or their firm or company anytime freely. The government is supporting new companies. That is what actually. So there were some laws that were actually the hindrances, that was creating hindrances or stumbling blocks to the industries, new industries to work freely in our economy. But government actually made it, liberalized the policies so that more industries could perform well in our economy. Okay, so all entrepreneurs, we welcomed many entrepreneurs to invest in our economy. So there were no much hindrances in the field of licensing. Okay, no, it was the permission from the government officials. It made very simple, easy, so that more companies entered in our economy. Okay, so another thing is that actually private sector was not allowed in many industrial sectors. Actually our government before 1990s, the government was actually not giving full freedom for these private sectors to engage in many areas. They didn't allow the private sectors to provide service in many areas. But after this 1991's no economic policy, what happened? The government allowed the private organizations to operate or give service in many more areas. So the privatization got more freedom in our economy. Then small scale industry, you know that there are many small scale industries nowadays, you can see. But before 1990s, what happened? Small scale industries promotion was not that much in our economy. So after this 1991, small scale industrialization promoted, so that actually, you know, that many people are operating small scale industries even in their home as well. So more women came in the field of small scale industries. Okay, so women empowerment is also happening in such a way. Then controls on price fixation and distribution of selected industrial products. So then what is happening? The fixation, distribution, marketing, production, all those made more easy and simplified the rules and regulations, so that more private organization, individuals and can operate freely in our economy. So they can decide the price and its marketing, distribution, etc. So government actually gave more freedom to private organization and other industries. That's what actually government, anyhow government wanted to promote industrialization in our country in order to increase the productivity in our country. That is what actually the new economic policy's goal. So we can move on to the next point. We can check what is the next point. The reform policies introduced in and after 1991 removed many of these restrictions. There were many restrictions those were actually working as a hindrances. So those actually didn't help more industrialization in our country. Okay, so what our government and its officials understood, all those hindrances in our economy, so that they removed after implementing 1991's new economic policy. The past restricted all hindrances making policies they removed from our economy. Then industrial licensing was abolished for almost all, but product categories alcohol, cigarette, hazardous chemicals, industrial explosives, electronics, aerospace and drugs and pharmaceuticals, all these areas still the government is having some control. Of course, all these areas these sectors must be with the government control. All those actually, because all these are alcohol, of course the government must have control on this sector. Alcohol, cigarette, hazardous chemicals, there are a lot of explosives, chemicals, all those actually those are harmful products and goods. So the government must have keep their control on those. Electronic, aerospace, okay, aerospace field also, aerospace science is there. All those actually all those sectors are still with government control. Okay, and drugs and pharmaceuticals, etc. So the government is controlling all these sectors. So apart from all these sectors, privatization happened. More private parties can easily work on that sector, provide their service. But in this area, the above mentioned, all these mentioned, alcohol, cigarette, hazardous chemicals, industrial explosives, electronics, aerospace and drugs and pharmaceuticals, all these areas are under government control still. Private parties can also do business in these sectors, but they have to take prior permission from the government. Okay, that's all. The only industries which are now reserved for the public sector are a part of atomic energy generation and some core activities in railway transport. These areas completely 100% control the government is having. Atomic energy generation and some core activities. Indian Railway is still completely with the government control. Okay, the government department that is. But the above mentioned areas, you can see sometime in some areas private public participation in aerospace in the field, then pharmaceutical as well. Then that the government is providing licenses to all these areas, cigarette making, then alcohol making, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, etc. The aerospace, etc. the government is also investing in this field, the government as well as the private organizations. But atomic energy field and railway transport, etc. are still completely with the government. Still all those areas are completely 100% with the government. Privatization didn't happen until now. Okay, many goods produced by small scale industries have now been de-reserved. Many small scale industries are operating with common men. So common men can operate all those small scale industries nowadays. Most industries, the market has been allowed to determine the prices. Who can determine the prices? The market can determine. Private individuals, private organizations and the market and the agencies, all those organizations can decide their products price as well. Okay, so a lot of liberalized policies implemented in 1991. so that we wanted to attract more private public participation. More people must engage in productivity, more products and services must be produced or promoted in our economy. That is why new economic policy introduced in India. Then we can move on to the next point, financial sector reforms. Here financial sector includes financial institutions such as commercial banks, investment banks, stock exchange operations and foreign exchange market, etc. Check financial sector reforms. Financial sector includes financial institutions such as commercial banks. There are many banks operating in our country. There are many banks in our country. You know that there are different types of banks. Industrial bank is there, IDBI bank is Industrial Development Bank of India is there, then Export Import Bank is there, then commercial banks are there. So many other banks like agriculture, for agriculture promotion we have NABARD is there. So different types of banks are operating in our economy. So there is investment banks, stock exchange is there. As you have heard already about I think there is Mumbai Stock Exchange and also National Stock Exchange in Delhi. Okay, so all these stock exchanges are also operating in our economy. Then foreign exchange banks are there. There are many foreign banks are operating in our country like Standard Chartered Bank is there, HSBC Bank is there. So many such banks are operating within this economy in our country. The financial sector in India is regulated by Reserve Bank of India. You may be aware that all banks and other financial institutions in India are regulated through various norms and regulations of the RBI. The RBI means Reserve Bank of India. The RBI decides the amount of money that the banks can keep with themselves, fixes interest, nature of lending to various sectors. RBI is controlling all these above mentioned 5 financial institutions. So RBI is also known as Bankers Bank. So RBI, Reserve Bank of India, is controlling every financial sector in India. Okay, that financial institutions in India are being controlled by RBI, Reserve Bank of India. So one of the major aims of financial sector reform is to reduce the role of RBI from regulator to facilitator of financial sector. This means that the financial sector may be allowed to take decisions on many matters without consulting the RBI. What happened after this? After introducing this new economic policy, our RBI also gave much relaxation to the financial institutions. RBI gave much freedom to all other financial institutions. All other financial institutions are under the control of RBI, but now some exemptions RBI has given to all those financial institutions. They need not every now and then they need not to consult with the RBI for its interest rates, all those things actually. So many things. The other financial institutions in India got much freedom from RBI's control. Okay, so that they can also freely operate, work or provide their service in our economy. So that is what actually the new economic policy introduced in the financial sector. So RBI is not controlling every other financial institutions as they did before. They have control, but in limited areas. Okay, the other financial institutions need not contact the RBI every now and then for simple changes in their day-to-day activities. Okay, that is what actually we studied in this page. We can move on to the next point and see the reform policies led to the establishment of private sector banks. Indian as well as foreign investment limit in banks was raised around 74%. What happened? There are many private banks are operating in our economy. Even some foreign banks are operating in our economy, such as Standard Chartered Bank, HSBC Bank, etc. So many banks are there. All those banks are working in our economy, and even they can invest around 74% investment they can do. Okay, those banks which fulfill certain conditions have been given freedom to set up new branches without the approval of RBI. So without, if the banks are working properly in our country, if they are following the rules and laws of this nation or this land, then they can set up new branches without the approval of RBI. If their past performance is good, they are performing, supporting our India's economy properly, providing better service, contributing to our society better way, then they can open new branches without the approval of RBI, because their investment is huge. They can investment up to 74% in the banking sector in India. So what is, they can increase the branch networks in India, the foreign banks or the private banks in India. There are some other private banks are also operating in India. You know that actually we have nationalized banks in India. We have SBI, Canara Bank, then Punjab National Bank, Syndicate Bank. So many such banks are there. Okay, some banks are nationalized, that is with the under the perfect control of the proper control of RBI. We have also some other private banks like Federal Bank we have, then UTI Bank also we have. Okay, Axis Bank, before it was UTI Bank. Okay, then we have Catholic Syrian Bank. So many such, Dhanalakshmi Bank we have. So many such ICICI Bank we have. So many such banks we have in our country. All those are actually getting freedom freely. They are working in our economy well. Okay, the same time we have some foreign banks, as I already told you about the Standard Chartered Bank. Okay, so that is a foreign bank. Okay, then HSBC Bank is also there. So banks have been given permission to generate resources from India and abroad. Certain managerial aspects have been retrained with the RBI to safeguard the interest of the account holders and the nation. Okay, agreed. The RBI gave freedom to all other banks. Okay, little freedom they have given. But they have control, little bit control still they are having. Okay, RBI is controlling them, but day to day activities they are not interfering with other banks. On other banks activities they are not interfering. Okay, but they are controlling all other banks. The every financial institutions are operating within this economy are being controlled by RBI. Okay, but they have their own working freedom that RBI provided already. That's what actually this chapter is saying. Foreign institutional investors are there. Okay, so merchant banks are there, mutual funds, so many mutual fund companies are nowadays operating in our country. Pension schemes there are. Okay, there are many companies providing pension schemes. Some banks are also providing pension schemes. Even the nationalized banks also providing pension schemes. Okay, accidental insurance, etc. So many foreign institutional investors are working in our country. Foreign banks are working in our country. So they are doing the merchant banks. They are also providing loans to our people in the to vehicle loan as well as home loan, etc. You know that actually HDFC Bank is an example for private bank. Okay, I forgot to say before. So the pension scheme, HD Bank is doing good. They are one of the best banks in India. ICICI Bank, of course, they are also doing well. Okay, so many such banks in India are doing good. Every financial institutions are doing better in our country, better and best in our country. But all those are under the control of RBI, even though they can work freely in our country. But before 1990s, those banks could not perform well. because of RBI's rigid control. RBI was very rigid at that time, they were controlling, they were very adamant at that time, okay, but now they are relaxed. That is what actually we have studied in this page. We can move on to the next point, that is tax reforms. Of course, there must be a tax in our country. Tax reforms must be there. Every year or every 5 years, the government must introduce new tax policies. Okay, so tax reforms are concerned with the reforms in the government's taxation and public expenditure policies. Of course, the government is spending money, government is also receiving money. From where government receives money? Through the taxes. Different types of taxes our government introduced it on its people. Okay, then government is also spending lot of money for the developmental projects. There are infrastructural development. What are the main infrastructural developments occurring or taking place in our country? Mainly roads, bridges, aerodromes, schools, then hospitals, etc. So many such like that. Okay, so which are collectively known as fiscal policy. We can say this tax policy is also known as fiscal policy. There are two types of taxes mainly in our country, direct and indirect. What is direct? Direct taxes consist of taxes on incomes of individuals as well as profits of business enterprises. There are many employees, their tax the government will cut. Okay, then they need to file the tax. Okay, you know that actually. After that we also file a return file कर सकते हैं. So the individuals as well as profits of business enterprises, many business enterprises, many companies, industries, they also pay taxes. Okay, that is actually direct tax. Since 1991 there has been a continuous reduction in the taxes on individual incomes, as it was felt that high rates of income tax were an important reason for tax evasion. Many people in before 1991, many people didn't pay the tax properly because the government was actually putting more tax on people. So what will happen if the government put more tax on different areas, the people needed to pay more tax, then people may not pay exactly in time. What they do? They escape. They are very elusive. They don't want to pay more tax. Okay, so then what happened? It is now widely accepted that moderate rates of income tax encourage savings and voluntary disclosure of income. In such a situation, if the tax is very less, little taxes, then more people will pay. They do not hide, they do not escape, they don't cheat the government because tax is very less. So in every situation they pay the tax. That's all. That the government too understood. The rate of corruption, corporation, sorry, not the corruption, it's the corporation. The rate of corporation tax, which was very high earlier, it was the corporation tax was very high earlier, but now that reduced. Okay, tax which was very high earlier has been gradually reduced. Efforts have also been made to reform the indirect taxes levied on commodities in order to facilitate the establishment of a common national market for goods and commodities. That is what actually GST, the new tax our government implemented, started in 2017. The India government introduced GST. Okay, we will come to know that. So indirect tax is there. When we buy a product, the tax is also included in that. So you have seen on the cover of some products, all taxes included. Okay, so like that actually. What is in this page? We studied the importance of tax. There must be taxes in every country. There must be taxes. Then only country can exist. The country can do fundamental developmental program. Fundamental development program the country can do only when they have true and clear fiscal policy. They must follow a proper fiscal policy. So the direct taxes must be there, indirect taxes must be there in a proper way. Tax must be moderate, it should not be in a high rate or high level. It should not be. It should be moderate so that more people can pay the tax in time. That is what actually we have studied in this page. Now we can move on to the next point. That is, in 2016, the Indian Parliament passed a law, Goods and Service Tax, GST, goods. The full form of GST is Goods and Service Tax. Okay, it introduced the Parliament passed this bill when this law in 2016 it became a law. Okay, passed a law, Goods and Services Tax Act, to simplify and introduce a unified indirect tax system in India. Indirect tax system in India, it must be unified all over India. This law came into effect from July 2017. This is expected to generate additional revenue for the government, reduce tax evasion and create one nation, one tax and one market. We wanted to introduce what happened? We wanted to promote one nation. You need to remember, one nation. India is a nation. There must be one tax for every people and one market. In one market, Indian market, it should be known as Indian market. Okay, that is why one nation, one tax and one market for Indians. Indians are one. Okay, another component of reform in this area is simplification. It is simplified in order to encourage better compliance on the part of taxpayers. Many procedures have been simplified and the rates also substantially lowered so that common men can afford our taxes. Okay, so common men can easily survive. They can pay the tax with a smiling face. That's what actually. So the taxes our government introduced, Goods and Service Tax, it introduced in 2017. Okay, so that the GST. Nowadays, what is happening? Indian government is getting crores of rupees as tax every month. So more than 1,50,000 crores of rupees we are receiving. So okay, so our economy is the fifth largest economy in the world now. Foreign exchange reforms. What is actually foreign exchange reforms? We need foreign money in our treasuries. Okay, we want foreign money. Foreign money means dollars in our country. It will happen when we have enough foreign money in our treasuries. It will happen only when we export more goods to other countries. When we export more goods to other countries. Okay, then only we get foreign fund. Then foreign exchange reforms. The first important reform in the external sector was made in the foreign exchange market in 1991 as an immediate measure to resolve the balance of payment crisis. What is the balance of payment crisis? In 1980s, India was actually struggling. The economic crisis we faced. So that time we were importing petroleum. Now also we are actually importing petroleum products. When we import petroleum products, what we needed to do? We needed to pay the money, but Indian rupees they do not take. We needed to pay in dollars. Okay, so dollars we will get only when we export products from India to other countries. Then only those countries give dollars to us. All those dollars we can give to other countries for our imported goods. That's what. Okay, the rupee was devalued against foreign currencies. This led to an increase in the inflow of foreign exchange. It also set the tone of free the determination of rupee value, free the determination of rupee value in the foreign exchange market from government control. Now more often than not, markets determine exchange rates based on the demand and supply foreign exchange. So here actually it says that the money's value went down, devalued. So therefore what happened? More and more foreign exchange is happening. More foreign exchange is also happening. It also set the tone of the determination of rupee value in the foreign exchange market from government control. So now government actually removed its maximum control from the foreign exchange market, okay, so that people can freely exchange their money, so they can buy import goods from other country and they can also pay easily their amount to other countries for their imported goods and exported goods. So free market system is running. So it the exchange rates actually can be determined, exchange rates based on the demand and supply of foreign exchange. So demand means what actually? Demand and supply. That is actually when the price goes down, the demand will increase. When the supply and demand is actually connected. In economics we have, in microeconomics we have already studied about demand and supply. So as per the demand and supply, the money's value will go up and down. When demand is less, its value will go down. When demand is there and when supply is there properly in time, then its value will increase. Okay, so we will continue with this lesson again. So I trust you have understood the points again the better way. I also request you to go through the lesson one more and understand the topic well. We will have more discussion on this topic again.